Indy is accompanied by his mother, Misty McCarthy, April Jenner representing Lakeshore High, and he is the proud grandson of Mr. Kerry Bernard, one of our legal counsel. Indy, come on up and lead us.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That is quite an impressive resume you have there, being a young man in high school and a soldier, earning our respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Let us bow as we petition the Lord in prayer. Dear God, we're here once again asking you to bow down thine ear, O God, and hear this, for we are poor and needy. We want to begin, God, most of all by thanking you for allowing us this opportunity to assemble ourselves at this place that you provided. We want to thank you, O God, for last night's lying down and early this morning touching us with the finger of love and allowing us to see another day. We're thankful, O God, for your love, your peace, your joy, your goodness and your gentleness, your long-suffering. Thank you, O God, for your meekness, your faith, and your temperance, above which there is no law. We thank you, O God, for everything that you've done for us from our early existence unto this very present time. We pray, O God, that you would let the wings of this prayer go to the home of the family of Captain Vincent Liberto and give them, oh God, that peace that they need during this time of their bereavement. We thank you for the life that he lived and the service that he gave. We pray also, oh God, for this country, this state, and this local community, that you will allow us, oh God, to find more agreement among ourselves. And, dear God, to address the issue and the divide that exists among us. We pray, oh God, that it can only be done through your mercy and your grace. And these things we ask in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen, and amen.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Ford, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Dean? Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Thompson? Mr. Toledano?
Present.
Mr. Tanner? Mr. Belisario?
Here.
Mr. Lorino?
Here.
Mr. Groby? Mr. Canulet? Ms. O'Brien? Mr. Stefanczyk? Mr. Bender?
Here.
Ms. Blanchard? Mr. Smith? You have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Public comments, just read some of the rules that we have. Public comments, a 3-minute time limit is established for each member of the public wishing to speak for or against an item on the agenda, except appeals. Appeal speaking time per side will be 10 minutes, 3 minutes rebuttal, and 2-minute conclusion. So if anyone wishes to speak on any issue, or put a card in and just state your side, whatever you want, please come up and take one, sign it, and someone will pick it up and bring it up to the dais. Before we get started, I don't know if anyone's here for the appeal tonight, but Councilman Tanner is a little bit under the weather, and he has asked us to postpone that appeal. So I don't know if anyone's here for that. I think he reached out to everyone involved, but I just want to make sure that if anyone's here, when it comes up, we'll ask it to be postponed. So it will not be heard tonight. It will be heard at the November 7th council meeting. Thank you. We have a couple of special items. Note, the Parish Council will hold a public hearing in council chambers at 6 p.m. on Thursday, November 7, 2019. To review the proposed operating and capital improvement budgets prior to adoption. Copies of both proposed budgets will be made available for public inspection by October 1st, 2019 at the Parish Council office, or will be available online by September 25th, 2019 at the Parish Government website. What we have right now is number 1, ordinance calendar number 6241, ordinance to adopt the 2020 operating budget. I would like to have a motion to postpone that to November the 7th.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Balacero, second by Mr. Tanner. And the reason for that
Tanner?
I'm sorry, Mr. Taladano. There you go. I'm going to give it to Richard. But anyway, the reason for the postponement is it has not laid over the required timeline, so we cannot discuss it tonight, but it will come up at the November 7th meeting. So we have a motion by Mr. Balacero, second by Mr. Taladano. Please vote.
Chris?
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you. Number 2, ordinance calendar number 6242, ordinance to establish the 2020 through 2024 capital improvements budget and capital assets. I'd like to have a motion to postpone to the
So moved.
November 7th, 2019 meeting for the same reason. Motion by Mr. Balacero, second by Mr. Taladano. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you. Madam President, you're up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As always, it's such a pleasure for me to be able to introduce our Employee of the Month, and tonight it's Katie McGee. Whereas Katie McGee has been an employee of St. Tammany Parish government since September 15th, 2010, where she started working in the Department of Public Information. She is currently the Assistant Director of our Grants Department. Whereas Katie assists grant project managers in facilitating over $60 million in federal and state-funded projects and programs, and has managed the Residential Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. And whereas she has been instrumental in the implementation of our MUNIS program within the Grants Department and offers expert analysis of federal and state regulations to ensure St. Tammany Parish government's policies and procedures are compliant. And whereas Katie is the Executive Director of the St. Tammany Regional Arts Council for St. Tammany Parish, Katie organized the President's Arts Awards, an annual event hosting over 300 people, honoring local artists of several genres for their talents and contributions to our community. I'm going to stop there for 1 minute before the next whereas. You did a wonderful job, and it always thrills me. They pick artists, local artists to honor, and I'm just amazed every year that they keep coming up with these wonderful artists. So you did a great job, and thank you for that particularly. And whereas Katie is a forward-thinking, creative, and solution-oriented professional who fosters innovation in preparing the most successful grant applications possible, and whereas Katie is dedicated, dependable, and reliable, and we are proud to have her as a member of our parish government team and thankful for her hard work in the Department of Grants. Therefore, I, Patricia Brister, as President of St. Tammany Parish, do hereby recognize the hard work and accomplishments of Katie McGee as Employee of the Month for October 2019. Thank you, Katie. You always do. Everybody ready to vote? No. Thank you, Katie. Thanks. That's always the fun part of my job.
Yes, ma'am, that is.
Shall I go to the next?
Yes, ma'am.
Nick Richard and your son, Blake, come on up. As you all know, Mr. Chairman, we have a Jeans Day charity. Any employee who wants to wear jeans on a Friday donates $2 a week into a charity, and they get to choose the charity. So this time, I could not be happier. They have chosen NAMI. NAMI, Nick Richard and his son, is Blake.
Yes.
Blake, are here to accept the check. And we have been partners with NAMI since the beginning of our Safe Haven venture. Nick has done an amazing job out there, and we thank him very much. It's a vital part of what our plans for Safe Haven. And we were fortunate enough just to open a day center for NAMI just this year. So it's going forward, and he's doing a great job, and all the employees out there. And it is a peer-driven entity, which really helps also. So we have a little check for you from all the employees. And it is $4,346. We'll keep this one, but we'll give you the real one. How's that? The bank will take that one. Thank you, Nick, for all you do. Appreciate it.
Nick,
Would you like to say a few words? Yeah.
would you like to say a few words? But before you do, I just want to personally thank you, and I know the council feels the same way. I've only been there for 4 years, but I just can't tell you how many people your group has helped and continue to help with these projects, and it's well needed in St. Tammany Parish. So I just wanted to personally say thank you for everything that you and your team does.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Does my 3 minutes start?
Yes, sir.
I'm kidding.
Yes, sir. You go right ahead.
You guys don't get to vote on my speech or anything, do you? Because I don't have one prepared. You know, I brought my son, but believe it or not, he actually asked to come, right? So about a month and a half ago, I was going to a Mandeville City Council meeting, and he said, well, that's interesting. I want to go. And I'm like, oh, gosh. And I said then, just like I'm about to say now, I don't know if I should be proud or scared that he wanted to be here, and he may be regretting it a little bit. But, you know, again, I really, truly appreciate. I was shocked when I got the call that you guys were going to support NAMI, not because, I don't believe in the work that we do, and not because, I know we're doing good work. I've been here for 11 years, but I was shocked because nationally, again, people with mental illness are generally it's not celebrated. This isn't a topic that we generally talk about, and I'm proud to live in a parish, and I'm proud to raise my son in a parish where the employees are actually taking the time and taking the money out of their paychecks to support the work that we do. So to me, that really is the change that we hope to see, and that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm raising kids here, and that's why I'll continue to live here. So thank you, and thank you, Parish President, and thank you to all the employees that voted on us. I mean, it really is. It's what makes this place a great place to live. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam President. Next one, number 3, presentation by the Louisiana Legislative Auditor regarding the 218 Act 774 Audit Report. I think we have Judith and Brandon.
And Bradley.
Bradley.
Yeah, thank y'all for having us here. We just kind of wanted to give you an overview of the 4th year of the Act 774 project. For those that aren't familiar with it, this was a law that was passed that provided for enhanced oversight for entities in St. Tammany Parish that had 75,000 or more in governmental revenue. And then I also wanted to note, we kind of brought this up last year, in 18, there was Act 531 that was passed as an addendum to Act 774, and it said that any entity that had 3 consecutive years of no findings from these additional oversight submissions would not have to report under this item for 3 years, so, and triennial. We had 3 entities that met this criteria. I want to give them their kudos. It was St. Tammany Parish Fire District Number 9, Youth Services Bureau, CASA, and then North Shore Harbor Center. So those did not have procedures this year. Out of all of the entities, there's 122 that report to us, 69 met the criteria. We take a risk-based approach to determine what procedures we're going to do with them. We assign them based off of their financial statements. We send out best practice questionnaires. We look at allegations that have come in, findings from their audit reports, discussions with the CPAs, And then we decide, based off of their size, the risk that we found, what procedures we're going to assign to them. Of those 69 agencies, we, LLA, performed 13 of the procedures. We had 3 that had limited procedures that were done in-house, and then we had the 3 that did not have to report to us, and then 50 entities were performed by the CPAs. We have 57 of the reports were in as of the date of the report that we issued. 12 were issued by us. We still had 1 pending, which was North Lake Homeless Coalition. And the CPA had 45 reports issued of their 50, with 5 still pending. The pending ones were the St. Tammany Finance Authority. That one was due at 6:30 and still has not been turned in. The St. Tammany Parish Sewer District Number 4, that was due at 6:30 but came in this week. The Housing Authority of Slidell and Housing Authority of Covington came in on time. Those were not due until this month, the end of September. And then the Tourist and Convention Commission, which is not due to us until November 30th. The most common deficiency is pretty much the same that we found in years past. It's lack of controls over credit cards, collections, ethics. They don't always have written policies and procedures that are accurate or up to date or at all. And then a lot of times we found insufficient board oversight. There were 39 entities that we prescribed follow-up procedures. So the year before they had an exception, we had to follow up on that one. Of those 39 agencies, most of them corrected theirs. We had 8 of the 39 that we felt did not make significant progress towards correcting the issues that we had found the year before. And then we also want to point out, in looking at the audits of all these when we were doing there, we found several of the entities that had audit findings related to their staff not having the skills, knowledge in order to prepare financial statements properly. So what this means is they're having to pay more for the audit. They're also having an audit finding, and controls may not always be in place if you don't have staff to prepare financial statements. So it's because of this that we do want to suggest that the parish consider maybe offering some training or classing for these smaller entities to help them and their staff get what they need to in order to prepare their financial statements that will help save an audit cost and take care of an audit finding. We also are in the process right now of starting the procedures for year 5. We're evaluating the 6/30 fiscal year in entities that just finished and trying to come up with their procedures. And then I also do want to bring up that we have our CLGE, which is the training class that LLA does. We have one October 15th. It's going to be at the Pontchartrain Center in Kenner. And we want to let you know to please let anybody that you think could use that training. It's a level 2 training, so you had to have had the level 1. But it is open to, any of the government entities that, want to go to it in Kenner. If you're interested, you can call Andre Taylor at our office, or they can email clge@lla.la.gov to register for it. And you do have to register because seating is limited based off the size of the entity. And that's about it. I don't know if y'all have any questions.
Any questions? Go ahead, Steve.
Right here. I read in the back of the report, and I think it's that everybody here ought to know, if you haven't read that report. A few years ago, we talked about addressing a IG for this area, and I noted that you had shown in the audit report that you're spending about $300,000 a year, whereas if we had hired an IG, we'd be spending somewhere around $1.3 million. So I think we ought to take that as a credit somewhere. I don't know if it gets us anything else, but I wanted everyone to be aware of that.
Yes, and that $300,000 approximate, that includes the additional audit fees plus any of the administration fees that we cost. So that's the total additional cost.
Anyone else?
Yes. My question to you all is, what all can you do to these firms who do not comply with the regulations? Because I think you have several who continue to have the same findings, not 1 year, but 2 or 3.
2 or 3. We report them to you. All we can do is report them with these exceptions in here. There's not much we can do. We kind of leave it to you and the councilman that may be over that district, that board, or something like that, to maybe, you call and talk to them when you see these repeat findings and see if you can talk to them about correcting these findings. I mean, we talk to them when we go out there, and we have the auditor kind of help them figure out how to address what they want to do. And I'll let Brad speak to that as well.
Ms. Pat wants to speak.
Oh, please.
But I think the training that you talked about is going to help that tremendously. I think some of them that have these findings over again, they just don't have the personnel or the training to do it. And I think we're going to take that up as an issue and get that done. So I believe that will help somewhat.
Okay.
Absolutely, and just to note as well, the exceptions that we're seeing in St. Tammany, a lot of the things that we're looking at there are pretty simple, basic things, written policies and procedures, some general controls that are being put in place. When the auditors look at writing findings for the audit reports for the larger entities, they consider whether or not that's significant enough to be considered a full finding. The only law we have on the books through our office that has any enforcement powers is when you have an agency that has repeat findings, meaning a significant finding that's in the audit report itself for 3 years in a row. And there's been special cases. We just started enforcing this law about 3 years ago. It's been on the books since 2015. In certain limited cases, the Audit Advisory Council that we report to can take away an agency's state funding if they have those findings repeated for 3 years in a row. So far, we've brought 9 municipalities to the Audit Advisory Committee. These are the ones that had significant findings going back many, many years. And even in those cases, the committee has given them the option of trying to correct those issues with our assistance. And so no one's funding's been cut off. We try to work with them to fix those problems, much like we do here at St. Tammany. But overall, our organization is a reporting organization, and so we look to the boards of the fire districts and the recreation districts and others to try to correct those findings internally.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, I appreciate it. We'll see you next year.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll go to appointments. Number 1, resolution to appoint 1 member to replace Ron Murphy, resigned on the Board of Commissioners for the St. Tammany Parish Fire Protection District Number 8. Mr. Fitzgerald? You're on, Dave.
I'm good, thank you. Yes, after conferring with Fire District 8, we do have a good candidate, Stephen D. Saucy, Jr. His resume is before us here. And the incumbent highly recommended the individual, and he seems to be a quality, a person that has a good experience with emergency procedures, and et cetera. So that's my nomination.
Motion by Mr. Fitzgerald,
So
second
moved.
by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Resolution number 2, resolution to appoint Michael O'Connell to replace William Bartlett, resigned on the Board of Commissioners of Water District Number 3, District 4. Could I have a motion and a
So
second?
moved.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Taladano. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Number 3, resolution to reappoint Mr. Tom Davis, term expired, on the Board of Commissioners for the Hospital Service District Number 1, Ward 4, District 4, 5, 6, 7, and 10.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Groby, second by Mr. Taladano. Please vote.
Mr. Smith? Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Thank you. Items to be pulled tonight. Before we get to that, on the consent calendar. Any items not pulled from the consent calendar are automatically approved in whole by one vote. Items pulled from the consent calendar are discussed and voted upon individually. A majority of vote of the entire council is required to adopt the consent calendar. Ordinances for introduction that are going to be pulled is ordinance number 1, ordinance 6243. Ordinance number 2, 6244. Ordinance number 3, 6245. Ordinance number 21, 6263. Under resolutions, resolution number 1, C-6168. Number 10, C-6181. And I'm going to pull ordinance calendar number 6066AA for adoption. I'm sorry. I'm just going to discuss it. I had pulled it for the other one. We'll just leave it there and when we get to it, we'll just do it when we get to it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so that's what we have right now. Anybody, Mr. Dean? No, sir. Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Thompson? Mr. Taladano? Mr. Balisaro?
I'm okay.
Thank you. Mr. Groby? Mr. Canulette? Ms. O'Brien? Mrs. Stefanski? Mr. Bender?
No, sir.
Ms. Blanchett?
What are they doing?
Mr. Smith? Okay. Anything on the administration side that needs to be pulled that we do not have? Okay. Anything from legal? Excuse me, what?
Computer, they're running into problems with the computer. You can't vote. They found something went wrong. Something wrong with the computer.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not stopping you now.
Yes, it is. No voting.
Well, I'm not voting. Oh, we have to vote on something.
Yeah, consent calendar. Consent
Okay.
calendar.
Well, I'll get to that one in a minute. Yeah. All right, okay. Anything from legal? Anything from the audience that wants to be pulled? Okay, before we can do this, we have to repair the voting machine so I can vote on the consent calendar.
Yeah, we can do a verbal.
We can do it verbally. All items not pulled, I need a motion. Motion by Mr. Canulette, second by Mr. Dean. Mr. Dean, vote yes? Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Thompson? Mr. Taladano? Mr. Balisaro?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Mr. Groby? Mr. Canulette? Ms. O'Brien? Mr. Stefanski? Mr. Bender? Ms. Blanchett? Mr. Smith? Thank you.
With that. Hold this for a second.
We already got it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's fine. You can go on.
All right, we can go on to the first.
I'm going. All righty, number 1, ordinance calendar number 6243, ordinance to amend precinct boundaries legal description within St. Tammany Parish to comply with the Louisiana Secretary of State's Office regulation. I'm going to go to Mr. Henderson on this, please.
Thank you. The Registrar of Voters, Dwayne Wall, came to us several months ago and indicated that the state demographer, Bill Blair, I believe his name is, had indicated that there were 2 precincts whose boundaries were correct, but the description in the ordinance was incorrect. Therefore, we had to change our ordinance to correct the boundary definition. At the same time, they indicated that there were 10 other precincts whose boundaries that were being described were no longer identifiable, such as an old logging road that had grown over 10 years ago. And they recommended that we make some minor changes to those precincts' boundaries, and that's what this ordinance is all about. And I think the Registrar's voter is here, and he can explain more if you'd like.
Sure. Who is that?
Wait, well,
Good afternoon, Dwayne Wall, the Registrar of Voters for St. Tammany Parish. And that is correct, we received a timeline, a redistricting timeline last year when we held our annual seminar. I provided a copy for each of you so that you have the overall timeline. In 2020, December 31st, the precincts will freeze until 2023. Last year, in 2018, we split, the parish council split 11 precincts, which addressed the larger precincts at that time. Our precincts are in really good shape right now. The only thing we have left to do is to correct some of the, again, as Mr. Henderson said, correct some of the visible features that are no longer there. Again, the login road, the description used to be a login road, or it used to be a drainage canal, and now it's all covered over with houses. So these changes reflect, these particular precincts reflect those changes to visible features. And they will be prospective precincts, meaning they will not take effect until after the vote for parish council, after the reapportionment process. But they will be used for the reapportionment process for the parish council districts. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing no questions, thank you, Mr. I'm sorry, Steve. I didn't hear what you said. Yes, I was just checking to see if we have any questions first, though. And there's no questions, so now we need a motion to introduce. Motion by Mr. Stefanczyk, second by Mr. Canulette. Please vote. No vote, no vote, no vote.
Did you want to talk about the timeline?
You want to talk about the timeline also?
If anyone has any questions, I mean, if you have questions about the timeline, you can feel free to call me, call the office after Saturday, because we've been busy. We voted about 15,000 people so far, early voting in 3 locations. So,
Great.
But I'd be more than happy to explain the timeline and what prospective precincts mean for the reapportionment process.
Okay.
Mr. Lorino, it might be good, we have a nice turnout today, it might be good if Wayne would just explain in general terms of redistricting.
You have to ask to speak, right?
Oh, excuse me, I got it.
There you go. Now you got it.
So I think it might be good, while Mr. Wall is here, from the give an overview of that redistricting process.
Sure.
Take a
Sure,
minute or
you
two.
go right ahead.
Okay. So December 31st, the precinct freeze begins. No precincts allowed until January 1 of 2023. April 1st, the Census Bureau officially begins the 2020 census count. November to December, the elections for President, Congress, and PSC. December 31st, the census results are released to the President, and the Census Legislature Voting District Project Phase 3 submissions occur. In 2021, January to April, the census data arrives. January to April 1st, beginning the 6-month parish and municipality governing authority requirements to examine the apportionment and report by ordinance. April, that ends, the end of the 6-month parish municipal would be June 30th to September 31st. And then December 31st, the legislative redistricting must have occurred. And that's with Article 3, Section 6. 2022, March 1st, the school board reapportionment resolution must pass. November to December, the elections for President, Congress, PSC, and school boards. 2023, January 1, precinct freeze ends, precinct changes would be allowed. That is the timeline.
And that's the process. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Wall, for that summary. Up to 2020, December 31st, the last one. Could you just expound on that component a little bit? Census/Legislature Voting District Project Phase 3. What, do you have any idea at this time what Phase 3 submissions would involve?
I do not.
Okay. We can call you later on that.
Yeah, Dr. Blair may know the answer to that, or he does know the answer to that. But I would have to assume that that would mean the state legislature would have its information at that time.
Okay. And summarily, as I reviewed this with you, there are two options or opportunities that we have in order to address any precinct issues. And that one of them is going to end this year, December 31st, and we'll have another opportunity, it looks like, somewhere before January 1st of 2023.
Yes, and the difference in the two, anything you do now to December 31st, you can make changes to precinct lines and not have to worry about other districts. Once you get into the reapportionment process, then you'll be concerned with other districts as well. So you'll be only splitting precincts at that particular time. Here, you can redefine those for your reapportionment purposes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, seeing no one else in the queue, thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Thank you for the information. Number 2, ordinance calendar number 6244, ordinance amending the Parish Code, Chapter 130, to amend Section 130-969 to add new permits using cemeteries in HC-3. Ms. Blanchard.
I make a motion to introduce and then to refer to planning and zoning.
A motion by Ms. Blanchard, second by Mr. Smith. Thank you.
We have to
Please
vote. We have to vote because we're.
I just said thank you.
She was telling me too. That's on you.
Please vote. I'm just being polite, Steve. Gene.
He just cursed me.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you. Number 3, ordinance calendar number 6245, ordinance to declare multiple tax adjudicated properties as surplus property to proceed with the sale of those properties. Mr. Smith.
We had identified at the agenda review meeting last week that there were 2 properties within this that are up for adjudication that we're considering here out of the, I think it's 5 or 6, that we want to have removed from this ordinance. So we'd like to amend the ordinance to remove those 2 properties. The reason that we're asking them to be removed is because we had some dialogue with the Habitat East St. Tammany office, and they have expressed an interest in those properties so that they can use them for some affordable housing that they do in that area. And we've also had some dialogue with the city of Slidell, which really of no importance for them to be involved. But instead of us putting it through this process, and we've talked to our legal counsel about it, it would save everybody some money also if we could just remove them now, amend the ordinance, and deal with those later on.
Okay, so you're making a motion to amend the ordinance. Mr. Canulet, second the motion. Please vote. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Which one?
Eleanor Street.
Okay, all righty. Okay. The 2 properties that Mr. Smith is removing are Ellender Street and Martin Luther King Drive.
You got it.
Correct?
Correct.
That's correct? Okay. All right, we have those. Go ahead and please vote.
Mr. Toledano, Ms. O'Brien, Mr. Stefanczyk. Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you. We need a motion to introduce as amended. Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Ms. Blanchard. Please vote.
No.
No, no vote on that one. Okay, number 21, ordinance calendar number 6263, ordinance to revote an unopened portion of Louisa Street and a portion of Rosella Avenue, Ward 4, District 10. Ms. O'Brien? Motion by Ms. O'Brien. Motion to introduce, second by Mr. Canulet. What's that? Oh, concur, well, I have number 21.
Number 21 needs to be referred to planning. It needs to be introduced and referred to planning.
That's what it is now.
Yeah, but she just moves to introduce it and need to be referred to planning and a vote as well.
Okay, you need to, a motion to introduce and move the plan. Ms. O'Brien, you need to make a motion to introduce and refer to planning and zoning. Okay. Motion by Ms. O'Brien, second by Ms. Canulet. Mr. Canulet. Thank you. Please vote. Oh, was the staff? Did y'all, okay, that was on the other.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Resolutions number 1, CS number C-6168, resolution to concur, not concur with Slidell annexation and rezoning of 0.44 acres from Parish A-4 to Slidell A-6, Ward 9, District 14. Mr. Smith?
Yes, we offer motion to concur.
Okay, we have a motion to concur. Please vote. And second. Oh, I had a second by Ms. Blanchard. Please vote.
Mr. Thompson, Mr. Toledano, and Mr.,
You did a double hit.
okay,
Yes, I hit on it.
thank you. With a verbal vote, motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Thank you. Number 10, resolution CS number 6181, resolution to concur, not concur, with the City of Mandeville annexation and rezoning of 1.059 Parish HC-2 to City of Mandeville B-2, Ward 4, District 10.
Move to concur.
Motion by Ms. Ms. O'Brien, second by Mr. Canulet. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you. We'll go to the appeals. As I mentioned earlier, Mr. Tanner would like the appeal. Ivan Malakic, appeal in the Zoning Commission denial on August 6, 2019, to rezone 3.93 acres located south of Highway 435, east of West Mermaid Lane, west of White Oak Lane, from A-1 Suburban District and RO Rural Overlay to HC-3 Highway Commercial District and RO Rural Overlay, Ward 10, District 6.
Motion to postpone. Motion to postpone.
Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Toledano.
I forgot you.
Please vote.
It's working now. Okay. Sit back and go.
Mr. Dean? Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to ordinance for adoption. Ordinance number 1, ordinance calendar number 6066AA, ordinance to amend section 115-3 of the Parish Code of Ordinance relative to fill mitigation. Before we go into this, members of the council, we discussed this proposed amendment to ordinance 6066 at length during our September meeting in order to give the parish attorney sufficient time to review potential legal concerns of the ordinance amendment. The motion to defer to the vote on amendment to our November meeting was made and passed. The attorneys have completed their research and provided their report and findings. Therefore, I'm requesting a motion and second to reconsider the proposed amendment to Ordinance 6066 tonight. I'd like to have a motion and second if possible.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Dean, second by Mr. Balisaro. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Okay, we'll get to the ordinance. I have the ordinance in front of me. I'm just going to read it just for the record so that we have it. The ordinance is going to add a new section 115-3B, 6I, as follows. In those cases where fill mitigation is authorized, the standard outlined above in paragraph 6A through 6H are otherwise met and detention storage capacity is created within the same floodplain in order to comply with section 125-197E4. Said storage capacity shall not be utilized to meet the fill mitigation in this section. Section 115-3B, 7E, as follows. In those cases where fill mitigation is authorized, the standard outlined above in paragraph 7A through 7D are otherwise met and detention storage capacity is created within the same floodplain in order to comply with section 125-197E4. Said storage capacity shall not be utilized to meet the fill mitigation required to this section. Add a new section 115-3B, 9F, as follows. If those cases where fill mitigation is authorized, the standard outlined above the paragraph 9A through 9E are otherwise met and detention storage capacity is created with the same floodplain in order to comply with the section 125-197E4. Said storage capacity shall not be utilized to meet the fill mitigation requirement. That's what the proposed change says, and so we'll get started if we can. Could I have a motion and second so we can start the discussion? Motion by Mr. Canulette, second by Mr. Thompson. Thank you. Hold on, I'll get to those in just a minute then. Okay. If everybody remembers, we had a lengthy discussion about this at the last meeting, and we can have that again. We have a number of cards, and we'll do that. But the purpose why it was passed on at the last meeting was for legal, to give the council a legal opinion. Therefore, I'm going to ask Ms. Carlin if she will read the opinion that the district attorney put forth on the term shall not. Ms. Carlin.
There we go. The Civil Division has reviewed ordinance calendar number 6066AA, which as drafted amends certain sections of the St. Tammany Parish Code, Chapter 115-3B, to clarify that in cases where fill mitigation is authorized, detention storage capacity shall not be utilized to meet fill mitigation requirements set out in Chapter 115. The Civil Division was asked to review these amendments to determine what, if any, review process would apply to fill mitigation determinations by planning and development staff under the current requirements of the Land Development Code. After reviewing the proposed language and working with engineering and development staff, the Civil Division has concluded that as written, waivers of the amended section would proceed as any other waiver of parish regulations. Waiver requests in connection with a subdivision under the review of the Planning Commission would be made to the Planning Commission, and waivers regarding individual lots or which fall under Section 115-3 and are not under review of the Planning Commission would be made to the Board of Adjustments. Said waiver requests would be heard at public hearings, and appeals would be taken using the process set out for appeals under the Parish Code of Ordinances. The council may adopt ordinance number 6066 AA tonight if no further amendments are made to the ordinance. I also know that there were a few questions about the ordinance looks a little different this month than it did last time we
Yes,
saw
ma'am.
it. The last time we saw the ordinance, you still had a working draft in front of you. So there were some provisions that weren't underlined that should have been, and some provisions that had both underlines and strikeouts. The version you have in front of you reflects the actual changes to the code as it's currently written. So that section particularly that was both struck out and underlined, that section was not in the parish code. And our charter requires that when you adopt an ordinance, that you have underlines for anything amended and strikeouts for anything removed. And any of that working language that was never part of the ordinance, it would not be appropriate for that to appear in the final adopted version. So that's why it looks the way it does today.
So, Ms. Collin, just to be clear, even though those words are not in there, it still means we still have the same intent of the term shall not as it would if they would have been in there, but it still have the same intent.
Yes, it does not change the meaning of the
That's
amendment.
correct. Okay, so we're not changing what we talked about before.
That's correct.
That's the most important thing.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I thank you very much. Okay, I'll get those in a minute. We'll get those. Okay, what we'll do is we have some cards from the audience, and as I mentioned earlier, please, we're going to stick to the 3 minutes. I know everybody would like to speak on it, but we'll start the clock and we'll just stay to our 3 minutes and move through. So we'll go to Mr. Campbell first. Mr. Campbell?
Thank you, Mr. Loreno. David Campbell, Little River Bluffs, 11082 Garden Lane, Folsom. Thank you very much, Council, for taking this ordinance up. I'm not going to take much of my 3 minutes because I spent the last 2 days on behalf of the Lake Pontchartrain Basin Foundation calling all of you, every candidate in St. Tammany Parish who is running for office except judges and sheriffs about a questionnaire that the foundation has sent to you, and I see a couple of you. I put LM by your name, which means I left a message for you. If you want to return, if you want to be on record as to how you responded to those few questions, please send it in. Now, I'm taking my hat off of Lake Pontchartrain Basin Foundation. I'm putting my shirt on of the Little Chifuncta River Association. And that is what I've been before you on many occasions before. I'm proud to have founded that little organization 40 years ago in our home on the upper reaches of the Chifuncta River. And we have been dealing with this problem of large subdivisions that end up with a lot of pavement and they're slab on fill in flood-prone areas. And we've experienced that. It's real life. I know you've heard a lot of that testimony. What I wanted to say to you just tonight is that I think this is, in a way, really just your beginning. This is, by circumstance and change of everything, you're going to be looking at these issues of proper development for the future, and we want development, but we want development that doesn't harm voters and residents who are already here, and that is what has been happening. I'm not going to go into the Medline, for example, but someone... That's not an issue. No, it's not. But these, particularly in our area, we've seen adverse consequences. And so this ordinance will do a lot, but I do think it's just the beginning for you. And we do urge that you go ahead and pass this, and I'll yield my time because I am losing my voice again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Joan Simon? Ms. Joan?
Hello.
Hello.
I'll only take a moment
Yes,
because
ma'am.
I think what I wanted to say was just said,
That's
basically. Thank you for taking this up. it is a first step. We need to move forward and make this a more sustainable situation in this parish. I think we need to do that. So thank you for considering it, and I hope you all vote to approve it.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Thanks.
Terrence Moon. Mr. Moon, Mon, I can't. Yes, sir. Oh. Okay, Mr. Mon's not here. Miss Elizabeth? Elizabeth Mon? Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Miss Lynn Fritcher? Fritcher? Miss Lynn? Yes, ma'am. Take your time.
I actually said I wasn't going to speak, but anyway.
That's
I
okay.
hope that you all pass this ordinance.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Gerald Barbier? Thank you, sir. Margaret Browd? Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Fickner, I know yours isn't for the record.
Are you saying that I like to talk?
You know I like to have fun, too.
Me too. Margie Bickner, Prairie
ma'am.
Lacombe. I thank you all again for voting for this tonight, because I hope you all do. And I'm very glad to see us moving forward with this. I'm hoping we do a lot more, as we've discussed in our study group, and I'd like to be a part of it.
That's not for discussion tonight.
I know. But the thing is, we do need to move forward with a lot more. And what we've done with this ordinance is like a lady putting fingernail polish on a run on her stocking. You know, it's a start. It stops the immediate, or one of the immediate problems, but it's not a solution. And we really need to look at replacing the stockings. I mean, we need a serious look at the ordinances that affect building and planning and zoning, and setting up ordinances where developers still are going to be going before the planning and zoning and asking for reprieve and the ability to go in and continue doing things the way they've been done is not satisfactory. We need to make a process that allows for development, but allows for good development, and allows for people to come in and do what needs to be done in a good way that helps everybody in the community, that it helps them, but it also helps the people who are already here, and just does development in a very good way. So I thank you all again, and I especially thank Mr. Grovey. He's been wonderful helping us with championing the people and the people's causes. And I thank you all and hope that all of you can be champions of the people here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Martin. Didn't see you all the way in the back.
John Martin, 12375 Ark Road. This ordinance is the cornerstone. It's not the end, it's the cornerstone of a number of changes that need to be made in our ordinances to protect the people that are here and the new people that are coming here. We need to get control of building in floodplains where people are in danger, and this is the beginning. This is a good beginning, and it shouldn't be changed. It's simple, it's straightforward, and with a little time and a little work on preceding ordinances that are worked through, it's going to be good for St. Tammany Parish and extremely good for the people that are not only here, but the new ones that are coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Moon. Ms. Barbara Henry? I'm sorry about that.
It's being particular.
My phone's ringing from my key.
Oh, wow.
That's when you have a fancy phone, huh? Go throw the goddamn thing. Okay. Miss Barbara?
You did that years
Henry?
ago.
Go throw it in there for me.
Throw it like Miss
Throw it
Pat
in the
did
water.
years ago at a forum. It kept ringing. She just threw it about 50 feet. Hey, I know it didn't.
Miss Barbara Henry? Yes, ma'am. Thank you for coming, ma'am. Mr. Allen?
Thank you, Chairman Lorino and council members.
Thank you, my dear.
There have been some issues brought up that I wanted to address before you all vote. And one is that the developers are calling for private property rights. Well, that's all fun and good, but the floodplains actually serve a public purpose, and as such should be considered public servitude. Filling in and destroying them without any mitigation for it will hurt current residents and future residences. The parish, because they serve a public purpose, do have a right to legislate and protect the floodplains. We will not stop development. We don't want to stop development. I'm happy not to have to drive to New Orleans to do Christmas shopping anymore like when I was a kid. But we just want to develop with the current citizens and future citizens in mind, and the effects to the flooding that can happen. The floodplain management, the big saying is do no harm. And if we keep going along the way we are, we're going to end up with huge subdivisions in the floodplain, floods rising, and you'll end up with huge public expenses, having to raise taxes and stuff to put in levees and what else that people call for after every flood we see now, dredging and what forth. By protecting the floodplains, we can avoid a lot of those future expenditures. Also, we do have a lot of ordinances that are required by the FEMA flood insurance program in our Chapter 7. I'm not sure what number it is anymore, but that apparently is pretty much ignored during most of the planning period. And that's where we need to go and look at further protection for these floodplains. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Denise?
Hello, my name is Denise Tammany, formerly of Spring Lake Subdivision. I wanted to update the council that while I no longer live in Spring Lakes and came to an agreement with DSLD, I still want to advocate for the importance of this ordinance. I wrote a check for over $10,500 in legal fees to fix something that should never have happened to me. I should not have been lied and had information kept from me about flooding in Spring Lakes and that the river rises. I should never have been given a written assurance of that, a certification from a builder and a developer. All of these happened to me. And as a public servant in the federal sector, I say to all of you, I still will stand up and I still will speak because I'm remaining in St. Tammany. I believe in this parish. And now I'll be real close to the Abita Brew House, so hopefully y'all will join me there, and thank you. Please, please, support this ordinance. The work has to continue so that others don't have to write those checks. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Denise, we're glad you're staying in St. Tammany Parish, ma'am. Mr. Champagne?
Michael Champagne, 146 Northridge Drive in Northridge Estates. First of all, I'd like to commend the committee that worked so hard to get us to this spot. And secondly, I'd like to support what all the other people have said, and particularly what the last speaker has said. We continue to have issues day to day, week to week, with that Spring Lakes development. And those people need some attention paid to them. And finally, well, not finally, I would like to see no waiver as far as the shall not provision in this ordinance. And finally, in a previous meeting that I attended, it was stated that there were at 40 or so unfilled job positions in St. Tammany Parish. And it was also stated that a number of those positions were lower-level hourly employees.
Mr. Champagne, that's not the issue we're on tonight, sir.
Oh, wait a minute.
No, I'm not going to wait.
wait,
I'm not going to wait. That is a public works issue. We're here on a certain, I'm just saying, we're not going to talk about that, and please talk about this issue.
The budget was talked about
This
earlier.
is not the budget. This is on the ordinance 6066, not a budget.
All right, but what's the problem here is enforcement of these ordinances, and if we spent the money that's available
We'll take
on
care,
enforcement.
we'll take care of that when we get to it, but that's not the issue right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Amy. Okay, so Al, you're gonna just speak on those two. Okay.
I might go over 3, but I have some
No,
more
sir,
time.
you got 3 minutes.
Well, I wanted to tie in.
You have 3 minutes. Miss Amy can have her 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman,
You
for
go right
letting me
ahead.
speak. I'm Al Hamway from Lacombe. I have to read this document because I represent a number of business community here that are behind me: the St. Tammany Chambers of Commerce, North Shore Business North Shore Business Council, the Home Builders Association, Economic Development, and Metropolitan Association of Realtors. Would you all please stand up who are here? We're not going to all speak, but I'd like to have them.
Thank you.
One of our number one concern has been and always will be the health and safety of our citizens who serve in this business community. We've always supported reasonable practice to ensure safe and sound developments and construction and to prevent flooding of our homes, our businesses, and our developing subdivisions. We do not want new construction to negatively affect our quality of life in our parish or surrounding cities, as drainage knows no municipal boundaries. Regarding the adoption of the ordinance being proposed tonight, we do not support the passage of the ordinance and have numerous concerns about the manner and what we consider a very limited process that should have been handled a more holistic approach. We feel that additional analysis is needed and our engineering community should have been more involved. Our goal should be to balance development regulations with private property rights and the economic impacts to all involved. We believe this ordinance tilts the scale in one direction and does not achieve that balanced approach. We all can agree that changes in technology and simply the passage of time allows us to learn from the past and continue to improve on this vitally important part of how the business of permitting and reasonable development can and should occur in St. Tammany. As an example, and how this relates to the crucial home building industry in St. Tammany, the HPA has an attached fact sheet that we all have that shows the positive impacts of our industry in our community. Those impacts directly affect our tax base, the quality of schools and parks, and not to mention the thousands of jobs our citizens hold. Moving forward, we are encouraged that Councilman Lorino and the administration has pledged to reconvene a Code of Ordinance Task Force to look at the entirety of all ordinances and mitigation ordinances in St. Tammany Parish. We feel that this proposed fill ordinance adds to an outdated and non-scientifically sound universal set of codes that need to be reviewed by all stakeholders, including our government, our business community, and the building industry, and our citizens. We need to find a common ground. We sincerely hope by doing this we can make St. Tammany a safe place for a homeowner to invest and live while still enabling a vibrant economy, affordable homes, and the ability to employ the same homeowner in this community. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Miss Amy, you had a card in. You're more than welcome to come up.
Thank you. No, I'm good.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Harlan, James Harlan?
James Harlan from Covington. I'm generally supportive of this ordinance, but I just have really a point of information based on what I've been able to observe. There were 2 sentences that provided some guidance about what the offset would be required that were eliminated from what I'm able to see. Maybe there's something that was otherwise provided. Those 2 sentences are in cases where the fill mitigation requirement exceeds the said storage capacity, the difference between the volumes must be provided as additional storage. And I was wondering why that guidance to developers and the public was eliminated from the proposed ordinance, or was that based on the legal counsel that was not part of the original ordinance?
I think that's the part that you were talking about, Ms. Collin, at the very end, the working, that was left out.
Yes, so that version of the ordinance was not the version that the council chose to, or is currently reviewing to adopt. When that meeting in July, I think, our special
ma'am.
meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
They chose the language that's in front. So there were 4 different versions, but
Yes, ma'am.
the language that you're referring to is not the version that the council chose to move forward with.
That is correct.
Okay, and just as a point of process, was that version made available to the public?
Yes.
Okay, I'm
Yes.
just looking at the wrong
They were all, they were all discussed at all the meetings.
Okay. I'll go on to note that I think it's important when looking at ordinances to take a long view, because at the end of the day, floodplain management will become increasingly important given the climate change issues that are facing this region in particular, given both sea level rise and the increasing likelihood of very heavy rain events. So aggressive and management of the potential impacts is very important for the future and for future residents, and both existing residents and future residents, and the cost of this generally apply to the developers and the people who purchase the developers' houses. What the impacts apply to existing residents and future residents as these effects are aggravated in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Lee, Christopher Lee.
Thank you, Council, for allowing me to speak. My name's Chris Lee. I live on Fern Drive off of Harrison Avenue right there in Covington. I'm here today because I do not support this amendment. The reason I don't support this amendment is that I believed it to be a facade. It has the appearance that it will fix the problem, but in actuality it won't do anything other than add cost to the construction process. The increase in cost will surely affect my family and how well I can support them. It will decrease the amount of people that can afford homes, in turn hurting the labor force, a labor force that is one of the largest employers in this parish and certainly one of the largest in tax revenue generated. Being that so much of our economy in this parish is based around construction, it will have a severe impact. It's a land grab and only designed to decrease development. I'm 30 years old and have goals of raising my family in this parish. I cannot do that if our industry suffers, and that's the only outcome this amendment will produce. This amendment is throwing out the rules of math and science and inserting opinion and fluff. Opinions change through time. If this amendment passes a few years from now, there will be new opinions saying that this amendment was not good enough and we need more regulation. I assure you this amendment will not be replaced because it fails, but added to. And what this amendment supposedly solved will be swept under the rug and will have cost me and thousands of others like me a significant portion of our financial well-being. I ask instead that we search for real solutions to the problems. There is something in life that stays the same and never changes, and that is math. It is universal, constant, and unwavering. A single pond in a subdivision can mathematically be calculated to handle both needs that are currently required between mitigation and detention of water. The amendment is separating them into two. This is not a solution to the problem, only a political ploy. If you can buy one apple for $1 or 2 halves for 75 cents each, at the end of the day, you still have just one apple, but you paid more to get it. That's exactly what this amendment does. It has the appearance of looking like more, but in actuality, it is the same. I think maybe we should enforce the current regulation that is in place, and if that's not working, then let's work with engineers to solve the actual problem by mathematically calculating what will fix it. We live in an area that will always have flooding issues. We can try and make it better, but it needs to be done through proven methods and not guesses. Please vote against this amendment until a real solution is created. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I see no other cards, and I'm just going to close on mine and touch on a few things that were said. Let's first get why we're here and why we're discussing this. For many years, the parish had been looking at 2 different ways to do this process. And someone would come in and say, 5 years ago, Joe did it this way and included all of it in the retention pond. And then next week, a year later, somebody would come in and say just the same. So there was never a finite definition of how that was working. And how did we get here? We got here by developers coming to the parish and asking and saying, they did it this way a long time ago, so now you have to do it this way. Well, that's not correct either. So the administration looked at it properly and gave it to this council, gave it to Ms. Blanchard when she was chair, and said, please give us some direction. Please give us some direction. So the what if is gone. And that's how we got this process started. And someone said it wasn't very well vetted. Well, I can tell you one thing. Since January of this year, members on that committee, business, individuals, and council members sat here for 6 months every month talking about it. Not only did we talk about it, we recorded it to where everyone in this audience could watch it and look at it, and then come up to that same mic and give us your opinions. And everyone was accepted and looked at properly. We had great discussions. So nothing was done on the side. Everything was done in the open. And from the day that I came in this chair where I'm sitting, that's the way that I do business. The second part of this is, I'm hearing on this side, we need more. I'm hearing on this side, we have too much. Well, in my previous life, when you get in the middle, you might have a darn good starting point because neither side is happy. And I believe that's where we're at right now, a starting point. And I think everyone on the home builders or the developers or anyone else knows that I have committed to putting this work group back together with participation from everyone to look at all the issues. But I believe, sitting here right now, we were tasked with one issue, to take the what if out of a problem that we have had by developers or people coming in and saying they did it this way back then. And that's what I believe we did. Is it perfect? No. Is it the last step? No. But everybody has my commitment on working on this going forward and looking at everything. And I don't believe there's a person out there that can say that I didn't say that at every one of their meetings. So I thank everybody for their comments. I also thank everybody for participating on that work group. And I look forward to the new work group, and I will see how many people really want to get involved in it, because I'm going to be there. Mr. Grovey.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask all the members in the audience who are supportive of this to please stand up. Thank you. That's it.
Ms. Blanchard.
We, the council, were asked to establish a standard by the administration. Instead, we're passing a fill ordinance that will apply across this parish that treats all properties the same. We were asked to establish guidelines to meet engineering standards. We're passing a prohibition. I have to agree with Ms. McNair. This process is not acceptable. It's not acceptable not to do our job and to pass off and allow waivers and exceptions by the Board of Adjustments instead of us, the council, doing what our duty as elected official and body of setting standards. That's what we're here to do. While heightened standards are warranted, smart building should be established, and we should do our jobs and establish those standards and not a prohibition.
Thank you. Mr. Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Mr. Fontenot a question, and perhaps he wants to include our chief engineer, Mr. Watson. I'll leave that up to you, Sidney. I was not on the fill mitigation work group, and this is not this question is not towards one side or the other. It's simply a clarification for me. So if I look at all four of these sections, and I go right past section 125 that repeats itself, said storage capacity shall not be utilized to fill the mitigation required in this section. The fact that these are cases where fill mitigation is authorized, but the intent here is that it shall not, whatever capacity is needed, it shall not be utilized to meet the fill mitigation required in this section. So, as an example, we're talking about a detention or a retention pond, correct?
You have two volumes in those unique situations where you have the floodplain and you have fill mitigation required. It is not every subdivision, it's not every project. In those unique situations, you have a requirement that for any fill that you want to bring into the site, you have to mitigate for that and allow storage to counteract that fill. You also have a separate volume of storage that is for the 25% reduction that has been parish law for many years. This ordinance would assure, not as I think was misunderstood and stated earlier, that you could not do the two storages, the two volumes in the same pond, but that they must be calculated separately and provided separately. Okay. So if you have 100 cubic yards of fill mitigation and you have 100 cubic yards of storage, you would need, meeting engineering requirements, of course, it's not automatic, but you would need 200 cubic yards of storage. You could not mix the two. There was an argument at one time, or a discussion at one time, that because of the timing of events, that perhaps that a volume could serve both purposes. What this ordinance does is say that they have to be provided, they have to both be provided. They can't be overlapped. They can be put in the same pond if it's properly designed, but they cannot be overlapped. So instead of 200 cubic yards, you have 150 cubic yards, and trust the timing that nothing will flood. That's essentially what this ordinance does.
Okay, so, Sydney, you're using terminology, and again, this is just for me to understand. You're using the terminology cubic yards, and let's stay with that, okay? So correct me if I'm wrong. If X amount of fill needs to be brought in, because this is saying in areas where fill is allowed, okay? I'm just reading, that's what it says. This is in areas that fill is allowed. If we bring in 150 cubic yards of fill, are you saying that you need 150 yards of detention pond availability plus 25%?
Correct. You need to mitigate that 150 cubic yards for the fill, and then you also have to have your volume for the 25% reduction.
Which might be another 50 cubic yards, 100 cubic yards, whatever. Okay, and that answers my specific question. Mr. Chairman, I would like to, if I may, and you made a point that, you know, we're in the middle, that's where you feel we are right now, yes, tonight. So let me just say to both sides, I think as you hear what I'm going to say, I don't think that either side will view this, my statement, as a victory for either side. But what it is what I'd like to come away from here tonight with for both our citizens and our builders, because they're our citizens too. Some of you who are citizens might be in the building industry, I don't know, who stood up. And some of these people who stood up might be in the building industry. I know they are, okay? But when I was elected to the Slidell City Council in 1998, one of the oldest subdivisions in that council district, I think built probably around 1950, and it was one of the first subdivisions, maybe the first subdivision. other than the Old Town area, which went back as far as 1880-something, okay? Very, very low. And I was now walking into a brand-new subdivision right next to it, right across the street, okay? But when I looked at that new subdivision, there was something different about it. It wasn't what I was used to seeing as a citizen who had already been living in Slidell for 23 years. I had never seen this before, the type of construction. And that type of construction, which built a subdivision a little bit bigger than this early small subdivision, went right next to it. And in that time period, there has been, and by the way, the old subdivision is about 4 feet above sea level, and the newer subdivision in 98 was about 9, 10 feet above sea level, maybe 8 or 9 feet above sea level. And no flooding was caused. And there has been no flooding caused by that subdivision since then. And this was amazing to me as I looked at the problems that I had seen earlier in this old subdivision, and then I looked at the new growth, and I'm like, wow. So what did I learn? And it was this, and I hope this is what we all walk out of here tonight, because someone said citizens are going to come. They're going to continue to come. We can't stop that. And I've heard people say, we want to continue to build. Is that correct? We just want it to be good. Got it. And the builders have said, by Mr. Hamway's own speech, that they want it to be good. So how did this occur? How did this old subdivision not get more water from the new subdivision? It was a different type of construction. Let me also add, and this is where we need to move forward as a community, because my area is not adversely affected by this whole thing. But there are times when we're all called to make votes for what's right and good for the community as a whole, and tonight is one of those votes. However, I want to add this. The city of Slidell added, in the next 5 or 6 years, thousands and thousands and thousands of feet of detention/retention ponds. Not by a builder building, by government seeing we built back here, we built since then, and you know what? We've still got some problems. There are massive detention/retention ponds in the city limits of Slidell. Massive. Most are kept behind trees. Ourselves, we just built in Councilman Canulet's district with the involvement, obviously the involvement of the administration, engineering, design. Someone had to design this, a massive detention/retention pond that is now going to help the Lake Village subdivision that's been there for years. So my point is simply this. We need to think not only about the homeowner that's current and the new house that's going to be built. We need to also think about what do we need to do as government, as a co-equal partner with these two entities to add additional ability to take water off of areas that have been taking water for years. Now this area won't take water. Am I correct? Jay, that detention pond's going to do its job, right? I'm telling you, it's massive. The city has so many detention ponds, and the parish now is increasing the amount of detention ponds. I'm just trying to use a term that we've not talked about. In addition, in my council district, we have gravity flow drainage, and since 1998 and on, we had pump capacity back then to quicken the gravity flow. We added to that pump capacity, continuously added to that pump capacity. We also have a cooperative endeavor agreement between 3 parish subdivisions that are at sea level, with $500,000 homes in them. Cooperative endeavor agreement between the parish representing the people in those 3 subdivisions and the city of Slidell to pump into their major drainage canal, which can pump 360,000 gallons of water a minute into the lake. So what am I saying here, Mr. Chairman, I know you're smiling, but I got to make this point. It's important. It's important for all of us. Without that progress that's occurred in the last 20 years, I would have flooding in my council district on homes that have been built a long time. We have to be partners in it, just like we have been with the big recent detention pond in east of the interstate of Mr. Caniolet's district. That's the only point I want to make. We can be helpful in this piece. We're not just here to be the judge. We're here to be a co-equal participant. That's my view. A co-equal participant on behalf of our citizenry and on behalf of the employers in this parish. On behalf of our citizens and on behalf of how do we build and how do we build safely? How can government help with areas that already have problems? That's all I want to say. This goes beyond, in my opinion, this goes beyond this past work group, which did a good job, obviously. The new work group, which Chairman Lorino is planning to put together, which I would agree to be involved in if you would like. But I'll tell you, my past experience of seeing Council District B with the city and Council District 12 is that improvements after the fact help tremendously. That's important. Improvements after the fact help tremendously. So for the people over here, if there were a way to make improvements to the conditions that you all are in right now, would that be a positive? Would that be a positive? I'm not talking about building anything new. I'm just asking, would that be a positive? Well, that detention pond's a big positive for a 40-year-old, 45-year-old subdivision, I can tell you that. I just want to make the point, I'm willing to be a third equal partner with the citizens that need it and our people who who build for a living, our neighbors, our carpenters, our electricians, our bricklayers, everybody, they're your family members. There's not just 50-50 here. There's a third, and a third. And I think we should commit to be part of that third, and I know the parish president agrees with me, and I believe everyone on this parish council agrees with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. I agree with you. I don't know if I agree with all of it because I forgot some of it. But anyway, I agree with you, and you know I love to have fun. But anyway, Mr. Balisaro. Yes, sir. You know that. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Ring.
No, I know that. I know that. Thank you. Well, I appreciate it.
Why did you?
Mr. Balisaro.
Okay, a couple of things. When you look at what we're talking at doing, during the 6 meetings that we had and other discussions, we had talked about on the appeal process. Mike brought this up more than once, and we talked at the field ordinance meetings and at council meetings, that when land use was going to change to conform to a subdivision for development. You had the zoning case to change that. And once that was done, what could not happen during the zoning process is to talk about traffic and talk about drainage and flooding, because that's a part of planning. And one of the things we talked about in these meetings was to look at the UDC, which is Unified Development Code, that lays out the zoning classifications. Then look at Ordinance 499, which is the planning document. Is it, and this is for the legal department, so I hope they're listening. I want to know if it is allowable to take some of the steps that are in the Ordinance 499 and move those over into the UDC as a part of the process to approve a zoning change.
We'll have to look at that, Gene. That's not something for this one.
Okay.
Okay. But I agree with you 100%.
Okay, just one other thing. Jerry, he took a walk. That retention pond, it's a 54-acre tract of land with a 45-acre retention pond. You have to go to see it. It is fantastic.
Thank you.
And it involves 4 council districts. District 8, which is Chris's, District 9, which is mine, District 13, which is Michelle's, and TJ Smith, District 14. That's going to benefit thousands of homes that were under always the concerns. And one of the things that they did is he talked about the Lake Village development. The engineering firm, the DePlanche Group, looked at the list of repetitive loss homes and serious repetitive losses, and went to those homes to see what had to do to improve and reduce the amount of flooding. They did a fantastic job by, instead of ripping up all the streets, they made connections into one main line that goes to the W-15. And since that's been in, it's been a significant improvement. That's all.
A lot of work, huh? Took a couple years to get it too, so don't think it just happened overnight. It took a while to get this, but you know, this is all good. And one thing I think we need to look at is we keep talking about the future. And one thing that 54-acre piece of land is going to do is it's actually going to change how the water's released and how the water's actually going to be treated now, which we got some new federal laws coming down, and Pat and her group have been working on this. Just to have a pond and let it run off into a creek is not going to be acceptable anymore. It's going to have to meet criteria. It's going to have to remove pollution and other items that the federal government has come out with. So the idea is just, hey, we're going to dig a retention pond. That's not the case anymore. It's changing. The law is changing. We can dig it, but you can't release it, so it'll do you no good. So I think this is a good first step. Got a lot of work to go. I personally think we'd like to give us another month or two, but I don't think that's going to happen. But just please remember that there's more to this piece than just this one item. It's a whole lot going on. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Smith.
Testing one, I got it, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For those of you who were here when we began this session this evening, you might recall that in our invocation, we petitioned the person or the individual or the entity that is in charge of everything that we say and do in life. And we petitioned him as a part of our request to allow us to not forget the necessity to have agreement. And that's not to say that we're not going to have disagreement on this side. And it's necessary in a lot of cases. But as we move forward, I heard a couple of people allude to who's for it on this side and who's for it on that side. And we have got to remember that this question it's not the first time that this question has come up among entities. It's something that we have dealt with in the past. Our foreparents dealt with it, and we're going to deal with it now. We have to deal with it in the future. But I would remind you of what the Creator said about some of this, very briefly. In Amos 3:3, when you get the time, look at what he said about, can two walk together except they be in agreement? Abraham Lincoln, in one of his famous speeches, said to the nation, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And so the questions were posed in those two instances and in some other instances. But the answer was given also. In Matthew, the 18th chapter of Matthew, verses 19 and 20, it says, if two of you will agree on anything as touching whatsoever they ask, it shall be given to them, if they can have agreement. And where two or three of us will agree, we can achieve much. And so we have a standard that we can refer to, not only in this matter, but matters as we move forward with the work group that's going to accrue from this session. We would just like you to remember that principle that is so critically significant to everything that we do here in St. Tammany Parish, the state of Louisiana, and beyond. If not, then the result is not going to be what we all desire, and that is to have a quality of life on this side that we all so dearly want. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very well said, Mr. Smith. Thank you very much. Seeing no one in the queue, please vote.
Motion passes, 12 yeas, 1 nay, 1 absent.
Thank you, and we'll get the work group going very shortly to be in place. First meeting will be in January. Thank you. Number 2, ordinance calendar number 6186, ordinance amending. Ms. Blanchard, did you want to say something, ma'am? Okay. I'm sorry.
You taking a break, or? Are we
No.
Okay.
I'm getting ready to get started.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Number 2. Turn my mic on. Number 2, ordinance calendar number 6186, ordinance amending the official planning zoning map to reclassify 1.12 acres from HC2 to A-4A, Ward 8, District 13.
I make a motion to pass. I want to thank these developers that are being smart developers and doing the right thing on this tract of the land. So thank you.
Second.
Second by Mr. Balisaro. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
Thank you. Number 3, ordinance calendar number 6218, ordinance amending the official planning parish zoning map to reclassify 1 acre from A-2 to HC-2, Ward 5, District 6. Mr. Thompson. Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Dean. Please vote.
Heard that.
Motion is unanimous, 3 absent.
Number 4, ordinance calendar number 6223, ordinance to extend for 6 months the moratorium on property having access to and/or fronting on Brewster Road. Mr. Dean.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Dean, second by Mr. Fitzgerald. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 5, ordinance calendar number 6224, ordinance to extend for 6 months the moratorium on property within a defined area within St. Tammany Parish, Council District 14. Mr. Smith.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Bender. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 6, ordinance calendar number 6225, ordinance to enter into Tammany Trades regarding development of the Bellevue Estate subdivision located in Ward 4, District 7. Mr. Groby.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Groby, second by Mr. Balisaro. Please vote.
Mr. Smith? Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 7, ordinance calendar number 6226, ordinance to revoke positions of Edna Street and North 7th Street, Ward 3, District 2. Mr. Fitzgerald.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Fitzgerald, second by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Ordinance calendar number 6227, ordinance to revoke an unopened portion of 8th Street, Ward 3, District 2. Mr. Fitzgerald.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Fitzgerald, second by Mr. Dean. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 9, ordinance calendar 6228, ordinance to authorize the transfer of certain parcels of Highway 41 Spur Bridge to Town of Pearl River, Ward 8, District 6 and 9. Mr. Tanner, Mr. Balisaro. Mr. Balisaro.
So moved.
Second by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Mr. Toledano? Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 10, ordinance calendar 6229, ordinance amending the Parish Code, Chapter 130, to add new permits use crematoriums.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Stefanczyk. Please vote.
Mr. Fitzgerald, I'm sorry, I pushed the button too quickly. Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 11, ordinance calendar number 6230, ordinance accepting final subdivision into road and drainage inventories, Ward 8, District 9. Mr. Balisaro.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Toledano. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 12, ordinance calendar number 6231, ordinance accepting the finalized subdivision into the roads and drainage inventory, Ward 4, District 5. Mr. Toledano. Motion by Mr. Toledano, second by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Mr. Bender? Yes. Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 13, ordinance calendar number 6232, ordinance accepting final subdivision into roads and drainage inventories, Ward 3, District 5. Mr. Toledano.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Toledano, second by Mr. Balisaro. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
14, ordinance calendar number 6233, ordinance accepting the final subdivision into the roads and drainage inventory, Ward 1, District 1. Mr. Dean.
So moved.
Motion, Mr. Dean, second by Mr. Toledano. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 15, ordinance calendar number 6234, ordinance accepting the final subdivision into roads and drainage inventories, Ward 1, District 1. Mr. Dean.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Dean, second by Mr. Fitzgerald. Please vote. I know why you're here, Marty. You got a lot of deals on this thing tonight.
I'm carrying this parish, you know what
On your back.
Mr. Dean, Mr. Fitzgerald, motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 16, ordinance calendar number 6235, ordinance accepting final subdivision into the roads and drainage inventories, Ward 1, District 1. Mr. Dean.
Yes, sir, again, so moved.
Motion by Mr. Dean, second by Mr. Thompson. Please vote. Is there any way we can do all of those at one time for Dean?
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 17, ordinance calendar 6236, ordinance to correct the road and drainage inventory, Ward 4, District 4.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Toledano. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 18, ordinance calendar number 6237, ordinance to amend the 2019 operating budget amendment number 10.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Toledano. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Ordinance calendar number 6238, ordinance to amend the parish code to create a new section.
Yeah, that's it. Sentence cut off.
Is that it?
No, it's
Yeah.
in the, underneath, enforcement and compensation.
Nuisance.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay. Well, I better read it, though. Ordinance to amend the parish code, ordinance chapter 26, nuisance article 1, general to create section 26-12, enforcement and compensation. Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Canulette. Please vote. You heard that tonight? Oh, we'll have to
Ms.
find some,
Blanchard,
bro.
Mr. Smith. Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 20, ordinance calendar number 6239, ordinance establishing a no-through truck zone on Hudson Street, Ward 8, District 12. Mr. Bender.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bender, second by Mr. Stefanski. Please vote.
Mr. Bender. Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 21, ordinance calendar number 6240, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 2.5 acres from A-2 to A-2 and MHO, Ward 8, District 9.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Canulette. Please vote. Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Toledano to adjourn.
Well, you got to finish the vote first.
Oh, you didn't finish that one?
Mr. Lorino,
I
please
didn't
vote.
vote? I got it. I'm in a hurry, man.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Thank you.
This is serious.
Yes, sir. Turn your mic on, Riker.
Can't until she gets rid of the vote screen.
Okay.
You know, we have this thing about.
Find what?
Do we have an ordinance that defines what a truck is? I'm being serious.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think it says specific term.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Dead
What
serious.
size truck?
This is my suggestion to our legal staff, that I know, but I know what it means, but I think it's important that we check to see if we have an ordinance that defines what a truck is. I'm being serious about that.
We will, Riker. I'll
Okay.
get them to do that, yeah.
Okay.
I already said it, yep.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, truck traffic? No truck traffic? It's weight. Number of axles and weight. I don't know, I'm not
Could
sure
you
if
get that
it's
to my lady?
vehicle